Hey all, here are OS Reviews. Today we're taking a quick look at Anker's Soundcore Liberty 3 Pros. These are audiophile grade, flagship level TWS true wireless buds, which are selling for around $200, and they are the newest generation upgrade compared to last year's Liberty 2 Pros, having a very similar design, but last year's version didn't come with active noise cancellation or ANC support. And just like before, there's a ton of clever software tricks that has been bundled in. In fact, the ANC also comes with its own HearID component via a hearing test, so it will calibrate the active noise cancellation and make it so that the intensity feels comfortable for you, doesn't add any pressure. Other notable specs include support for LDAC, so these are high-res audio certified. They can squish out as much detail using Bluetooth transmission as possible, and they also have 32 hours of combined playback time using the battery case, with the buds themselves lasting for around 8 hours on a continuous listen. They're still going with a dual driver setup that can supposedly pack in more detail. One of them is a dynamic, the second one is a balanced armature, so it claims to give you wider coverage. The packaging here flips open and is presented quite well. By default, we can see how the buds actually don't have any tips pre-applied, and instead they're all presented here on the edge, so you can have these little tips for added snug and resistance, as well as the traditional silicone tips based on the size to get a more custom fit and kind of then lock them into place. There's a tab here that includes the USB Type-C charging cable if you don't want to use wireless charging, which these also support, and then we also get just a few quick start guides. Although we have the black version of the buds, I will mention that it also comes available in a white, gray, as well as a purple shade. Taking a closer look at the Liberty 3 Pros, the buds themselves do feel extremely premium, and the surface here, which is touch sensitive, is a little bit of a fingerprint magnet, but you can see how shiny and reflective it is. It almost has this gradient effect as you're shining it on the light. And then the entire frame here is constructed out of metal, including on the edge here, the mesh. You can also see some of the IR sensors for detecting if you're wearing these or not, and so when you pop these out, the music will automatically play and pause. Otherwise, if we take a quick look at the design of the battery case here, the shape is still very similar to last year's Liberty 2 Pros in that it actually has a nice kind of slider design that you can use to pop it open. The mechanism feels smooth, and it's a pretty satisfying action with a slight curve to it when you're looking at it from the side. The entire body of the case is constructed out of a soft touch rubber material that is grippy, easy to hold, with a few chrome and metal accents on the rim. The battery case is also compact. They are a little bit larger than something like standard AirPods, as you can see there, but it's not too far off in terms of thickness. Like most premium buds, it supports Qi wireless charging, so I can just pop it onto any charging mat to quickly top it up. One other neat trick on the new model is they've integrated a few LED lights on the inside of the case that will tell you when the left and right buds are inserted. It gives you an interesting glow effect when you have them popped in, and so if I remove one of these, you can see the light here underneath. This one here will stop flashing in a moment. Definitely a lot of attention to detail with the craftsmanship, but like I said before, it's kind of expected at a more expensive price that these are going for. We've seen the Soundcore app before on their other products. It's still the same one that you use to connect on the Liberty 3 Pros, and after you tap on them, you can see the battery percentage remaining on the left, right side, as well as the case, and also go and tweak some of the settings here, like whether you want the ANC to be turned off, whether you want to jump into the ambient or audio transparency mode, or turn on the ANC here. So by the way, if I go into ANC settings, you can turn on high if you are in a really loud space or on a plane, and then comfort is kind of an everyday office use. Aside from the default ANC modes, you can also go into the aforementioned ANC Hearing Test, which is going to be customized just for you. Even the audio transparency mode has a few other adjustment settings where you can have it fully transparent, where everything will then come in, so you don't have to remove the buds when you are having a conversation, or you can have it so that only voices will leak in. Just like the ANC test, this is a separate test that we also saw on the Liberty 2 Pro and the Air 2 Pro from before. Basically, it will also take about a minute or so to set up. It will play a series of beeps and sounds through the different frequencies, such as starting from bass to trebles, to try and see if there's any weak spots or blind zones, I should say, in your hearing. And if so, it will then change the frequency response to try and bump up the other parts to make it more obvious as you're listening to music. And there's also some preset EQs that you can choose between. There's a signature sound, which has been tuned by some of the artists and other sound engineers that they have as part of their team, or you can choose other things like acoustic, bass boosted, bass reduced, classic, podcast, dance, deep electronic, hip hop, jazz, and the list just goes on and on. Pop, rock, R&B, spoken word for audiobooks, and then treble, boost, and reduce. There's also a 3D surround sound mode, but this function can't be used in conjunction with LDAC. So if you want the most detailed sound, you have to unfortunately turn that off. But this will also add a little bit more immersion. If you're watching back a movie, for example, it just kind of bumps up the overall spatial effect. Other things you can control here on the app include whether you want the LDAC to be turned on or off. So LDAC, again, will send 3 times more data to the buds. So it does consume more power, both on the buds and on your phone. But if you want the best quality of sound, that can be the one that you choose. And finally, there's controls, such as if you want to remap any of the touch buttons. So by default, there's a single tap, a double tap, hold for 2 seconds, and also tap 3 times. All of these can correspond to different actions. So there is a wealth of different modes that you can tweak and add, which is awesome. By default, the single tap is turned off just to prevent any accidental triggers, but you can turn it on and use it for something like volume or change it to something else. You get pretty much the full kitchen sink in terms of everything you would possibly want, including going through ANC. Final settings will allow you to turn on or off the auto play and pause, as well as whether you want any voice prompts. In fact, there's even a tip fitting test that they will provide that's using some of the microphones to detect if you have a proper seal. It's definitely a pair of buds where you will want to download the app here for sure. And it's, again, found for both Android and iOS. Now, maybe the only omissions from the companion app would be, let's say, a tracking function such as GPS or locating them, and then secondly, support for a low latency mode that you can turn on or off yourself. But arguably that's not the crowd that Anker, Soundcore are going for, because these are really meant just for sound and giving you as much detail as possible. In fact, they even tell you if you have the LDAC mode turned on, it will transmit more data, versus low latency is trying to do the opposite. But for things like just listening to music and podcasts, these will be perfect. And even for watching back videos on YouTube or Netflix, didn't really have a problem. Of course, the performance when it comes to sound quality is definitely very, very solid. They offer by far more detail than the regular AirPods can deliver, where almost all frequencies of sound, whether it's bass, such as a drum beat, or instrumentals, violins, guitars, vocals, and high notes, all of them just shine, and just plenty of details and even textures of those instruments and singers' vocals can be picked up. Some of those nuances, in fact, you won't really realize that you're missing out on until you try something like this. The software modes really did make a difference. Even the default, which is the Soundcore Classic, I think already sounds excellent, but with the HearID custom mode activated, they felt even better, just added a touch more detail and dynamic punch to the sound. Aside from the excellent audio quality, it's very good in terms of no issues such as distortion or static or anything like that in the background. So super clean, just the music itself, again expected for high-res audio certified buds, and the active noise cancellation, I have to say, has been definitely improved with some of that optimization technology that they've incorporated. Now, comparing them with the best of the best, which would be kind of industry standards like Sony's and Bose, I would say they are up there when it comes to effectiveness of low frequency sounds like engines that you might hear on a car or plane. However, for voices and higher frequency sounds, they're still not perfect. In fact, I would say arguably when it comes to overall noise reduction, probably Bose and Sony do still have a slight edge in terms of that, but these are definitely a good improvement, still is very competitive. Last but not least, just touching on the call quality, they have 6 microphones built on in, and I would say the call quality here is slightly above average. However, it's not quite to the same extent of the Liberty Air 2 Pros in that sense, because those had that longer stem design, like the AirPods, which just has the microphone pointing a little closer to your mouth, which will always be easier for it to pick up, especially with more noise around you. But overall, these do a fine job, especially if you are indoors. Things like making calls, if you're in a conference, they all work without really too many complaints. So that's more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of Soundcore's Liberty 3 Pro. I would say that if you are a current owner of the Liberty 2 Pros, the design does look very similar, and those also had excellent sound quality, in fact powered by similar technology in terms of drivers, so there's probably not a huge push on you to upgrade. But if you haven't tried one of Soundcore's buds yet that has this HearID custom EQ technology, then these are better than ever and also have that added active noise cancellation, which was missing from before, which is always welcome. The design is beautiful, it's super premium. The sound, again, really is the highlight here, just being as refined and detailed as you can probably get out of wireless buds at the moment, thanks to LDAC, and just very well tuned and powerful drivers in general that can really just give you a ton of detail squished through. Of course, that also means, again, that these are not really meant for gaming, so that's one thing to keep in mind, nor is the call quality as much of an emphasis, really is trying to prioritize music and sound quality above all else. So if that's what you're looking for, you can check out more details in the links down below. That's been the flagship sounding Liberty 3 Pros